In this video, we're going to discuss discretionary fixed costs. So when we think about fixed costs in general, basically we're talking about costs that do not change regardless of the activity level. So let's say that on this axis we have the number of units produced by the firm, and then on this axis we're looking at the cost, a particular cost. If that cost just remains constant regardless of the number of units produced, that's what we call a fixed cost. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, how can a fixed cost be discretionary? What are we talking about here? So fixed costs can either be discretionary or committed. And when we're talking about these terms, what we really are thinking about is kind of the long-term or short-termness of the commitment. So when we think about a committed fixed cost, that's going to be something with a longer-term commitment. Something that the firm cannot really cut back on if they decide, okay, this year we're having some financial problems, we can't just cut back. For example, let's say you have a 30-year lease on the factory building. So if you have a 30-year lease on your factory, and you're looking and you're saying, hey, we're having some financial problems this year, maybe we can cut back. Well, you can't just cut back and say, well, I guess we don't need a factory anymore. We're just going to try and get out of this lease somehow, right? So this is a committed cost. It's something that we think about as long-term in nature. But when we think of a discretionary fixed cost, so this is still a fixed cost in the sense that it's not going to change with the number of units produced, but it's actually something that's maybe more short-term in nature and something that we could cut back on. So let's say could cut back. So in this case, we're not talking about like a lease on a building. We might be talking about something, let me just change colors. We might be talking about something like our advertising budget. So advertising budget, PR expense, research and development. So you often hear about firms slashing their R&D, right? Now R&D, if we think about a firm's research costs or even its advertising costs, whatever amount it decides to allocate to advertising, if we go back to our notion of what a fixed cost is, we see that, okay, if we decide to spend $1 million on advertising, that would be our cost, would be $1 million. But no matter how many units we produce, we're still going to incur that same $1 million of advertising cost. But it's discretionary in the sense that each new year we can say, you know what, we were having some financial problems, we can cut back. We can say we're actually not going to spend that money on advertising this year. Whereas with a committed fixed cost, something like the lease on the factory, we really can't get out of that. Now, if we think about an example in terms of actual practice, let's take a university's business school. So let's say that your university, they have a business school and they're making a decision whether to renew access to a database that professors and students use to pull up some data. So they say, okay, well, we've got this database and we're deciding, let's say it's going to cost us $10,000 for a 1-year renewal to have access to this database. Well, that's really a discretionary fixed cost, because you could say at any given point in time, you could say, okay, well, we're up for this 1-year renewal. We're just not going to do it. We just decided that we're not going to do it. Something that's not discretionary, something we think of in terms of being a committed fixed cost for this university's business school, would be the actual building, the lease on the building that the business school is in. We can't just say, well, you know what, actually we're having some financial problems, so even though we have a 30-year lease here, we're just not going to have a building anymore. So the building would be a committed fixed cost with something like the database where it's more of a short-term thing that you can go and say, you know what, actually we decided we're going to cut back. That would be a discretionary fixed cost.